Welcome, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the podcast today. If you are new, welcome. We hope you enjoy. If you're not new, thanks for tuning back in. We love to see you returners here at Black Royalty Podcast. I know this probably isn't the voice that you guys are expecting to hear today, but I'm honored to be the host for this episode. It's going to be a good one. We have a really interesting topic to talk about today, and we have a very special guest, a friend, somebody new in the Black Royalty family. Her name's Olivia. She's a sophomore. She's majoring in music here at USD, and so without further ado, I'd like to welcome her onto the show. Hi, Olivia.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good? Mm-hmm. Let's go. Good. So we're gonna get into it, y'all. Okay, the topic for today is going to be stereotypes, particularly around the Black community, Black women, Black men, Black people, period. So we're going to kind of bring up some topics, kind of talk about where they stemmed from, what that means, and go into some other stuff too. So the first stereotype that I think is a big one, is being violent and being this almost like mad Black woman stereotype. I know there's a lot of things that kind of stem from that. So what are kind of your initial thoughts to people thinking that Black people are just violent human beings?
I feel like it's rooted back into like history where like after slavery, as you know, because it's always back to slavery, where like once we were free, a lot of fear kind of got, initiated kind of throughout the world, because it was like at first they weren't really considered human, and now they're brought into the community, and it was kind of like, are they gonna fight us, or like other things that made it a lot more complicated, and people put this image in their heads and then kind of mirrored it towards Black people. And then there are like some situations and issues like in the Black community, especially in like the South, like where my family is from, the hood, you know what I'm saying? There is a lot of crime, but a lot of people will generalize it for everybody when Black people are all over the world. They're not all from the hood, and they're not all violent. And it's like wherever you go, there's going to be crimes and violent people. So to me, I feel like people really, with the like Black people being criminals or violent, I think the people who've never really had a good conversation or really like talked to Black people or even like met or hung around them are the people that make those stereotypes. And because like if you really meet those people and hang out with them, you're not really going to get all that you really thought of, because each person is different.
Definitely. I definitely agree with that. I feel like a lot of people who believe the stereotype are either ignorant or uneducated, and I think that people could definitely do a better job in making an effort to learn and actually experience and talk to people, because that's the only way that things are going to change with anything in this world, is if people have open minds and they kind of just realize that maybe my viewpoint isn't always right, you know?
Yeah. And then sometimes people kind of want that stereotype to be true. Like they really don't care or want any kind of explanation. And then you have to think about the media too. I remember I saw this TikTok video, and it was like you look at 3 non-Black teenagers on Google, and it's like all family, and it's like all cute, but then they looked at 3 Black teenagers and it was just mugshots.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. I think media definitely has a huge part in that, and it's hard to kind of get that point across. Definitely say I see a lot more negative views of Black people and just normal media than I do positive stuff, and that can definitely help skew a person's view on how they view people. I know you mentioned like your family's from the South and stuff. Do you see like a difference between this stereotype in the South versus here in San Diego?
That's a good question. I know that because I've always been here in California, and I've always been to like PWIs or like the suburbs where there's really a lot of non-black people, and I know that like once they meet someone who is black or like for example me, they would expect a lot of things from me, like me being loud or like um, I don't know, I guess like super cool or like hip, you know.
Yeah.
And then I'm like not because I'm different. But I feel like there's a lot more stereotypes from people who really haven't really met black people. And then once you go into like those hood areas, it's really just like, it's kind of almost like an accent where everyone is kind of like that. Like regardless if you're black or not, like a lot of people are like similar to that, where they have like the same language or like from the same environment in their houses, so they look the same. So it's really not just like black people in the hood where that get those stereotypes, but it's like everybody over there resemble it.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like it's like one of those scenarios where like a black man could be so well dressed and step into an elevator with a white lady and she'll still clutch a purse, like that. Those kind of vibes, right? Like,
Yeah,
you don't
exactly.
have to look like you're like quote from the hood or like ghetto to instill a type of fear in somebody. It could just literally just be the color of your skin, and they'll
Yeah.
act different, they'll change their movements, they'll do something different to kind of protect themselves from, most of the time, nothing.
And then I remember, because I haven't gone back home a lot in Wisconsin, a lot, but the last time I was there, a lot of my cousins, they would kind of even stereotype me as, since I'm from the suburbs, as like having manners or like not completely black, if you understand what I'm saying. So stereotypes not just happen like outside the community, but inside the community.
Definitely. I agree with that. We kind of mentioned this one, and I'm gonna just combine these two because I feel like they can kind of relate in a way. But so the other two that I had was being loud and just black people being loud, which I'm not even gonna hold you. I know I'm loud, but that's just because I was raised. I was taught to speak up, so I'm gonna be loud. I'm gonna say what I gotta say. I'm gonna say it proud. And then also like ghetto, just black people don't know how to act in certain settings, or they always like gotta run around the room when they laughing, like, you know what I mean? Like what viewpoints do you have on those two?
I feel like because with stereotypes, people, the big problem with it is that people generalize everybody to that. But some of these stereotypes aren't necessarily wrong, if you know what I'm saying. Like a lot of, like for example, a lot of black people eat fried chicken. I can't stand that stereotype because it's like, why is it just fried chicken? Like, like put the whole meal in it, you know what I'm saying? Like the coleslaw, the cornbread.
Said put the whole soul food diaspora.
Yeah, I don't know why they just stick to the fried chicken. But anyways, like a lot of people like fried chicken. Like I don't know, really a lot.
It's
of
not just black people. It's white people that eat fried chicken too.
I think that there are some things that are kind of true, but when you generalize it to everybody, it's not true, and it can be harmful because then you have expectations, and it could just be really wrong because then you believe all those expectations, like rumors. So when saying that, I was thinking that because stereotypes can kind of seem like a blueprint to some people, where it's like, oh, I'm black, so I have to act this way, or oh, I'm black, so you know what I'm saying?
I feel that.
Where it's like, it is sort of true because like my family back home, they are loud, and people consider ghetto a lot of things, and now today it's like being less considered ghetto. But people would consider my family ghetto, but it's like there's really nothing wrong with that. And when it comes to stereotypes, when people try to generalize everybody, like I said again, that's what's really wrong. But when it comes to like black people, like they like fried chicken, like my family does like fried chicken. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I feel like people kind of have this perceived notion of how they expect people to do, like, oh, black people like watermelon, so we're gonna depict. I mean, like, but again, like you said, it comes back to history where people have been depicted a certain type of way, or the black community takes a liking to certain things, or something happens and now it's this generalized thing that people believe, and they're like, oh, well, I thought everybody like watermelon, and you're like, no, that's not how this works. Like, I definitely see what you're saying there. And I think that also it can lead to certain things, just how things that Black people, it's like basically out of their control, to be stereotyped to, like hair. I think people can associate hair with being ghetto or more ghetto, or if I see a guy with a nice fade versus with a do-rag on, like, who am I gonna feel like more comfortable like being approached by, you know what I mean? And so I think that can kind of fall into that another stereotype, unprofessionalism, which is like, just because I have locks or braids or I let my fro out does not mean at all that I'm any less unprofessional than any of the people that I work with or talk to on a daily basis,
And I wonder, like, what does that, like, I feel like people, when they do stereotyping harmfully, where it's, like, not beneficial, like, for example, being unprofessional, my question is, like, what do they mean? Like, what is the point of it? What is the point of, like, if I have an afro on, and what is that stereotyping as? Like, what is wrong with my hair? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I feel like people come up with a lot of excuses, like, it's distracting, but at the end of the day, I feel like it rolls back into the stereotypical thing where it's like, if we have people seeing you like this, they're going to either see that as distracting or they're going to see that as, quote, ghetto. And we don't want people in the workplace to think that we hired a ghetto person, and it's like, we only see afros outside, or we only see afros depicted in movies where people are struggling and stuff like that. Like, and it's like, since we've only seen this in this context, we can't have you bring that here into our workplace, And so I think that's kind of like where people try to defend, them being like, hey, you need to come in here with a flat iron, like, press every day, or else you can't have this job. You can't work here.
Yeah, I feel like that, like, the background of that is from stereotyping, and then they continue to stereotype. Because it's like, if they think, oh, well, that's considered ghetto, well, they're, like, falling into that stereotype and, like, allowing that stereotype to continue rather than break it down and destroy it.
The fact that we have to have rules and regulations and laws about hair just baffles me. It's like, this is really out here because people actually have real issues with this. We have to tell people you actually cannot discriminate based off of hair. Like, that's baffling to me. Okay, another one is just being not coherent or quote dumb. And I don't like to use the word dumb necessarily, but just not being able to fully comprehend something. Like, I don't know if you ever had like someone, okay, I'll give an example. So I had this class, and not going to go into the details, but I was in a group, and personally, if I can get it done by myself, I would rather get it done by myself. Because most of the time, the people in my class are going to be white, and they're not going to see exactly what I see. But so I had this class, and the teacher was basically having us answer questions that they'd given us and whatever, and so we were supposed to work them out with that group. And so I basically brought up this idea, or this question was a little bit open-ended, and we were just trying to figure out the cases in which this problem could be solved or whatever. And so I brought up an idea that I thought was pretty valid, and one of the other students in my group was like questioning it and was like, like, well, I don't really think, etc., blah blah blah. And there's a difference between questioning someone in a way that's like actually inquisitive versus when you're like, I'm just trying to devalue what you said because I don't think what you said is like, you know what I mean? And so I was kind of like, why are you asking deeper questions than what it was like? It's not even that serious. Like, I'm just trying to give an example. And this is definitely one of the other people in my group was like, no, she's right. Like, this can actually be a solution to the problem, whatever. And I was just kind of like, right. So why are you pushing it? You know what I mean?
But they're not listening, and they always got to have an
Yeah, I feel like it can be kind of just demeaning sometimes when people question you heavily like that. Like, oh, really? Like,
Yeah.
And
then you feel a certain way, like I don't really say anything offensive.
Yeah, and it makes me question myself and my own like knowledge, and I'm like, no, I know this topic. Like, I know what's going on. Like, I'm smart. Like, no, let me be confident in this. And then like I had to talk with my mom afterwards, and I was like, no, I think this person just tried to demean me a little bit. And she was like, yeah, he did. I hope you told him off. And I was like, no, I was like, it happens all the time. I feel like it's a trend where people just kind of try to demean you or make you feel like you don't really comprehend everything that's going on. And I'm like, I'm black, but I ain't slow. Like, I think that's definitely a big one that people, and I think students may just go through this. I would assume that other black students have experienced this before, I'm sure, in some capacity or some way, where whether it's with a student or a professor or a faculty member, that's kind of like, do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, like I'd be in class, and sometimes if we talk about black issues, then there's always somebody. They have to ask a question or try to, like, for example, the Black Lives Matter. It's like, well, you guys destroyed buildings. And I'm like, but it was like, you know what I'm saying? Where they bring up some kind of negative or question of a lot of things. And it's like, well, that's not the point. And we're trying to come up with a solution. And we're trying to help, like, destroy a problem that's happening. Like, that's not the problem. This is the problem. You're just staying away from it. You know?
Exactly. Yeah, I get that 100%. That's all the stereotypes that I could think of. I know there are a lot more, especially just as students and black people in society, period.
Yeah, there's that, black women are loud or ghetto. But there's also, like, very positive stereotypes. But I was going to ask you, because I was, like, thinking, like, and I did a little research, too. And, like, I was, like, looking up stereotypes. And then Google had, like, all these searches of psychology.
Right.
They're like, there's negative stereotypes, but there's also positive stereotypes. I'm like, why would a stereotype be positive? Because it's it brings out expectations that can be, like, overturned. And then also, it's just, I don't know, it's just, like, a lot of expectations and, like, not exactly realistic.
I mean, I agree with that. I think stereotypes don't quote me, because y'all, I ain't know the exact definition. I ain't do that. I ain't do all of that. But I mean, in my opinion, it's just kind of a general idea based off of observation of experience or activities or whatever you've been taught to assume about a group of people, right? Or a person, right? Based off of how they look or what community they're part of or whatever. Right. And so I think that, I don't know about stereotypes being positive, honestly, like just putting out. I just don't know. A lot of the stereotypes that I've experienced myself or come in contact with or heard about have been negative 100%. People that are like, oh, they generalize me this way or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like, and not just black people, Asian people, Mexican people, all kind of people, it's like, there's just this generalization that happens. I think often towards race, of course, is the first thing that we probably think of. But as far as like positive stereotypes, I honestly have no clue. I mean, like, is there any like examples? No, they were just saying like, oh, they can be positive, and that was it.
Well, they had like some examples, and I think one that I've read was like news anchors. Or news reporters, like they're very intelligent or they're very quizzical, like things like that, or like teachers are smart. Like I guess that's good
that
for
definitely
them.
Ain't right.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's like it could easily be debunked. So like a police officer example, it's like a lot of people say, like kids would say, like police officers protect people and they're brave and stuff. But then so that's one positive stereotype. But then you have the stereotype that they're racist like, and killing people.
All cops are bad, basically. So, yeah, I get that.
But the reality is that, like, you can't generalize it because it's not true. You know what I'm saying?
I don't think there's any like in pertaining to like all teachers are smart or whatever. Like there's no like hard facts. Y'all not out here doing a study on every professor and every teacher that are like, oh, teachers have to be smart, because there are some teachers. I've had some real interesting teachers in my day. Yeah. And I can guarantee that the way that they're teaching the class and the way that they're instructing these students is not the smart way to do that. And yeah. So I think definitely there's questions to be asked about that stuff.
Or they'll say because you got a degree then you're smart.
Oh yeah,
it's like there's just so much like other stuff behind that. So I don't even get what the point of stereotyping is. And when I was looking it up, they're like, stereotyping is used so people can get a generalization of the world that they can't completely all experience. Which, I mean, that sort of makes sense, but is it true? No. And does it really help? No.
It's like, how are you gonna fall into a stereotype when you literally cannot experience everything, you know, about that culture or about that person or whatever it is, you know?
It's pretty much a theory, and it's like, well, the problem is go out and go meet those people. Like, why are you like, oh, I don't want to talk to black people because they're too loud. Did you ever talk to one? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's true.
So
that's really true.
And then we do it too to our own community. And I don't think we like realize that so much, that it's not exactly helpful. I had an example, but I forgot what I was going to say.
It's okay. It happens. I think it's interesting for me because I did private school, K through 12, a lot of white people. I did public school for high school, and then I went, of course, back to private school for USD. So I've kind of seen both sides of things, to where, you know, people assume that because I went to the high school that I went to, that I don't know what I'm talking about. And my high school isn't even bad. My high school, shout out Lynn Bloom, swoop swoop. My high school is a great high school. I loved the people that I met there, the friends that I made there. Still talk with them today, and they have some really good programs that they have for students to continue to advance and be great in college. And it was a selective enrollment school. Now, is it in a bad neighborhood? Yes. But there's some great people and some great students that have come out of that. And I think people can see that. And, you know, they'll be like, oh, well, she went to this place, or she grew up here, or she's from Chicago. Like, when I tell people I'm from Chicago, they'll be like, oh. Some people are like, oh, that's cool. And some people are like, oh.
Shootings.
Right. Basically, they're like, oh, she must be violent, like automatically. And it don't help that I'm 6 feet and weigh a lot. But, you know, it's kind of like that just general thing that people are like, oh, this girl's from here, so she must be this. Like, you know, it's definitely a theory. You're right. It's definitely a theory that people they just don't take the time to prove for themselves. You know?
And I also said that I think that people really don't want to find the truth, because I was like, when I was thinking about stereotypes, I always think about the chicken one, because it's just I just get so mad it's not the whole plate. But I was thinking about this picture for the Little Mermaid, where they had drew a little African little hairpiece and watermelon and chicken. And I was like, none of that. I feel like we add on to making the stereotypes bad, because it's like, why are we upset about watermelon? Like us eating watermelon.
I mean, just because it's historically just been depicted as a
black thing.
Yeah, and in a very negative light. So when people are like, there's ads, there's cartoons historically of people black folk, big lips, big nose, skin completely black, like just dark as night, looking basically crazy, and then like a piece of watermelon, and they're like trying to advertise at 69 cents. Like,
so I was thinking, so I get the big nose, big lips thing, because that is just, especially these old Disney cartoons, like
that's just, it's out of pocket. It really is.
Yeah. But for me, it's like, how do we destroy and try not to make stereotypes affect us so much? And it's like, I was thinking, well, if they know that we get affected by like the watermelon joke, then they're gonna put the watermelon joke more just to make us upset. But I was like, but I'm not offended by the water. Like, I'm offended that they like did that on purpose to make you upset. Like, that's like the problem for me. But when it comes to the watermelon part, I'm like, but everybody eats watermelon, and watermelon isn't bad. So I just feel like, how do you so I'm all over the place.
No,
but how do
I'm
you
with
get
you.
rid of some of these stereotypes and make it to the point that people don't always have to attack you? Like, if we just find some stuff, like, if they keep throwing bullets at us and you don't want to ignore the bullets, you want to address them and try to stop them. But what if you try to make the bullets invincible, like yourself invincible to the bullets, to the point that it's like they want to stop shooting those bullets at you?
I don't think there's ever going to be a point that we get to in a society where somebody will make a racial, in particular, a racial reference and it not offend somebody. You know, I feel like because race is so ingrained in the culture of the entire world and it's just become this big thing, that I don't know if we can ever just get away from that, you know? So I feel like there's always going to be, you know, you can say that, you know, you don't feel this type of way if they depict this, you know, and it's not right. And I understand the concept of just being like, it's just some people just doing whatever because they believe X, Y, Z. But it's like, for me personally, as a Black person, it's not my job to educate people. It's not. And there's always going to be ignorant people out in the world. And I think I have to come to terms with that, is that there's going to be some ignorant folk out there. And that's just period, point blank. And some people, we can try to get them to understand where we're coming from, get them to understand the things that we believe particularly, and how we're all the same and we all bleed red blood, right? But I just think that there's never going to be that point where people come to a general sense of I don't care, or they see something, you know, racist and they're like, oh well, no one in the entire race cares about what this person said. And I feel like that's almost like a desensitizing type of thing, which I hope that we don't ever get to, honestly.
Yeah, I don't mean desensitizing, because again, we have to address the issue.
Yeah.
But just trying to see if there was any way that we could make some issue, like some stereotypes, disappear. Like, why is the watermelon thing a thing?
It just it's not our job, and I think it just depends on the person. It depends on that person's willing, because you can preach a million things to somebody, you know, you can give all these reasons of why somebody shouldn't be racist or why somebody shouldn't have, you know, bigoted opinions, but it's at the end of the day up to that individual to be an open-minded enough and willing to learn, to be like, all right, yeah, I want to change, I see where they're coming from, etc., blah blah blah. You know, it's really up to them. You can do all the educating in the world and it won't mean nothing if that person is closed-minded.
Yeah, that makes sense. And again, it is not our job to educate, or like take kind of control of the situation, because the people are going to be
people are going to do what they're going to do, like they all have always done, now and forever. So yeah, I agree with that. All right, well, the last kind of like topic that I kind of want to hit, or just point that I want to cover before we finish, is just like, what does Blackness mean to you, or what does your Blackness look like? How do you like define that, if you do?
For me, I've always been raised as Black, if that makes any sense. I've never really had to question or wonder like what I identify as, because I've been told by other people and people around me if I've just been Black. For Black, like as in what that means, it can go back to like, I think, history, from where I'm rooted, like how I was raised, the people who raised me. skin color too. But there are so many people who are like they can be light skinned, but both have very dark skinned parents. And I know that's very confusing because people then wonder like, am I mixed? Am I black? What does it mean to be black? Acting black? I've never really had an answer for it. I've just always been like, it was just like a state of being, if that makes any sense. Not exactly like a complete definition.
Yeah, I totally get that. I think for me, I asked people this one time, and I think the best answer that I got from that question to me, that stuck with me the most, was in regards to how to define your blackness, is that you don't, like it's so multifaceted. It's so many different areas. It's so diverse, like you said. And to put it in a box is almost disrespectful, because it's just like, we're changing, we're growing, we're learning. And so is my blackness. My blackness is changing. My blackness isn't going to look the same now than when I'm 50. It's going to look different for me. Times change, things change. My parents' blackness, when they were growing up in the 70s and 80s, is not the same as my black journey right now, as somebody who's growing up in the 2000s, right? So I think that, I think people can have a very strong sense of blackness without necessarily having to define it. So it's cool if you are like, it's just so much I can't even really like explain it, because it is like, that's exactly what it is. Like, it's just so many different things to try to like put that and contain that. It's just like, it's almost impossible. You know what I mean? So I know we've been talking about, of course, stereotypes and a lot of negative stuff just surrounding that. But I kind of want to turn it for this last bit and just see how we can take these stereotypes as Black people and turn it into something different, make it a positive outcome, learn from it, change, how we move and make it a positive thing.
I think first I would ask, with anything that's negative, I was kind of taught this, but with anything that's negative, how can you make it a positive? And it really depends on like your thinking in the mind, because you can really make anything negative and anything positive if you really try. For stereotypes, mainly the intent is negative, like to be negative and to make harm. And then there are stereotypes that are like just generalizations. But I think with stereotypes, like if I were to be told, I guess I'll ask, if I were to be told that, I don't know, some kind of stereotype, like maybe I'm ghetto, I would have to decide what to do with that. Like, am I going to sit there and be offended and, like, oh, they called me this? And what am I going to, like, switch the narrative or, like, I don't know, prove them wrong or, like, kind of make some kind of positive outcome from that? And I know that a lot of, like, greats, like, big, great people of any race, where they're, like, considered, like, I don't know, nerdy or uneducated, poor, or disgusting. And they took all that, like, negative feedback and they made something great out of it, where they proved those people wrong. They started businesses. They showed that they were super educated and really helped them to be even more educated. Like, for example, the hood example. My mom is from the hood. And a lot of people would say that they're very uneducated. My mom finished high school when she was a sophomore. So she graduated her sophomore year of high school, went to college, and she finished college at 19 and had me. So she completely switched that narrative from something that's completely negative. And I feel like other people can do that too. Like, don't give in to the stereotype. Like, they want to make you feel bad, but you don't have to feel bad. And it's wrong, it's not true. So, and once those people see that dedication and that determination and really who you are, like the gifts that you have and like the mentality that you have and how it's so much stronger than other people's that are trying to bring you down, I feel like that sheds a light on other people, especially those who are being negative. And it's kind of like a big game changer. It's like, wow, this person really is a lot more than I thought. Like the Good Samaritan. Like a lot of people, you know the story. Like a lot of people were like, oh, they don't like our people. But the Good Samaritan, you know, he helped out the person. It was like, not all of them are like that.
Yeah. I think so. So basically, just kind of like, you know, turning it around and making something positive, motivating yourself, you know, and taking those things and turning it into something bigger, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I think this is a great conversation. I definitely love and enjoyed talking to you today. And you know, here at Black Royalty, how we do. Every time we have a new guest, we gotta pull out the crown. Know what I'm saying? So you get to take your crown with you today. Thank you so much for being on the show and being willing to talk. Giving some advice to the people and turning everything around and making it positive. So that's it for us here at Black Royalty today. Thank you so much, Olivia, for joining us.
Thank you.
And we will see y'all next time.
How you doing, Olivia? Peachy?
We ain't here like yesterday.
Huh?
Why y'all to hit it?
Laptop charger back where it goes when you're done with it. Why must you take my laptop charger and then leave it on the ground? My laptop charger's back at the door.
You taking a lot of hard classes today, huh?
I was